Sorry. Okay, I thought it was on. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next item is the consent calendar. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move consent.
Second.
Motion by Hudson, second by Geringer. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That brings us down to regular agenda items.
Hold on.
Oh,
Can you repeat the approval of the minutes, pretty please?
Approval of minutes was Hudson. No, I just said aye. Taylor was here. Oh,
yeah.
okay. 4-0. Well,
Okay, that brings us down to item 6, legislative update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Watts is here to chat about what's happening at the state, which is a little bit busier than what's happening at the federal level at the moment. Congress's attention is elsewhere, not quite on an infrastructure bill. We're still hearing that there's a big desire to do an infrastructure bill, and we're tracking that progress pretty closely to make sure that we can weigh in at any relevant point for CCTA. We're also watching very carefully what grants are being released. As you know, we've been very successful with securing some of those in the past, so we always like to keep our finger on that pulse. So if anyone has any questions on the federal update, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Watts to give you an update on what's happening in Sacramento.
Okay.
Good morning, Commission members. I'm happy to be here today. The first thing I wanted to bring you up to date on was something I touched on briefly last time, and that was the controversy surrounding Caltrans proposals related to the ITIP, where they proposed to take out 3 projects from the Central Valley, deprogram them, and then convert the funding into reserve for rail. That threw up a lot of angst and anxiety amongst everybody from the Central Valley to the proponents and supporters of SB1, because it felt like somewhat of a betrayal to do that. It has worked out. Yesterday at the Transportation Commission, the regional partners who had thought they were going to lose their funding were informed or told that indeed the 3 projects in the Central Valley will be restored. In addition, the Secretary of Transportation did also announce, rather than a reserve for rail, they were going to specifically identify projects. And 2 of the 3 projects were ones that benefit ACE and the regional San Joaquin. So it turned out well in the long run for the Central Valley. And I think from an industry perspective, those who put our shoulders to the wheel on SB1, we're grateful that the Secretary stepped in and made sure and clarified that the proposal didn't undo some of the things we had worked on so diligently. I want to touch on something that's been in the background in Sacramento, although it seems to be on the foreground down here in the region, and that is the Faster Bay Area proposal for funding for a mega regional projects. Senator Bell did introduce a bill last year. SB 278 is still in the first House in Appropriations Committee, so it has to get out by January. That bill does not contain any of the legislation that's going to be seen in an eventual mega project package. Right now, it deals with more transparency on guideline development for some of the transportation programs. Nevertheless, his key staff member on this, Manny Leone, has been reaching out, and your management team has been in touch with Manny. I've been in constant touch with Manny just to make sure nothing was going to take off without knowing about it. So up to this point in time, as I indicated, it's been a very, very quietly developing concept in Sacramento. I do know that you're going to be receiving a presentation at your next board meeting to go into more depth and detail. I don't propose to do that here at all. It's a procedure that's strongly supported by some of the business organizations in this area, but on the other hand, there's some controversy in terms of the way the legislative staff is looking at how it might be put together. There's some concerns about whether there'll be project listings or whether there'll be just open-ended programs, and that's still being worked out between Senator Bell, his staff, and the representatives down here. So I think at this point, wait and see how your presentation updates you. And as I get more information, I'm keeping Lindsay aware of what's going on as I touch base with Senator Bell's office on a frequent basis. One other thing is a little interesting item of note, I think. It doesn't really affect the operation here at the authority, but it does impact the county in a sort of way. Beginning of last year, the two chairs of the transportation committees asked the California Transportation Association to take another look at the Transportation Development Act, TDA, process, which includes the quarter-cent sales tax as well as STA program funding and how it's allocated and some of the fare box requirements and some of the other process requirements. I mean, there's a book this thick on how to administer TDA that sits on a shelf in Caltrans, and everybody's subject to that. So the thought was, is there a way to make it more user-friendly and assist transit agencies at the end of the day in getting money out the door for the transit services? The connection to the county here is that Rick Ramsier, the county connection executive, is the nominal chairman of the work group that was put together. They have progressed to the point after a series of work group meetings that they have a concept that they're starting to circulate with the legislative staff as a first round, and that's going on right now. Well, the rest of us will be able to see that report to see how it might affect operations within the county and how the flow of money may or may not go or be improved. So stay tuned. We'll have more for you on that. And I think that was the update. Oh, will mention one last thing, and that is there are 4 SB1 or SB1 funded programs that are competitive grant programs. And interestingly, they started off through the guideline process a year ago with meetings in March and then in June and July. And those programs are the Active Transportation Program, the Local Partnership Program, which is the steady state program we've had for every time we've had a funding program at the state level. The Congested Corridors Program, which is an attempt to kind of broaden out and use multimodal approaches in corridors, and the freight program is called TCEP, and I forget what it stands for. Why I bring this up is that they are sliding the award dates. First it was March, then it was June, now it's into October. And that's become kind of for some of the folks who are going to be doing self-help county elections in November, having awards of large amounts or being stonewalled, depending on how lucky or fortunate your agency is, could have a detrimental effect on the elections. And you're going much in advance of that, so that doesn't have an effect on this county. But I do mention it in the context of the mega region project, because that's going to be presumably on the ballot in November. And if this region receives half $500 million worth of competitive grants, that's great for the region, but it's going to be a talking point for opponents. And so there's an effort to get them to change the actual award date. So I'll keep Lindsay abreast of that, because it would affect things that you're going to be competing for if they do change that date. So with that, I bring my presentation to a close.
Dave?
Now, backing up to the Bell bill, is there anyone else attached to that in the Senate or in the Assembly? Is it just Jim Bell at this point?
The bill itself is just with the senator. I do know he spent most of November trying to meet with every single member from the Bay Area and get their needs or what their objections are. So I don't know how that's turned out, and he hasn't added names to the bill, but he's doing what he did with SB1, which was individual one-on-one meetings throughout that month of November.
But do you need the vote of anyone from Southern California? I mean, there's no one attached to this. It's just Bell.
Well, I think once it goes into full bloom and the language is inserted in it, I think you'll see supporters that will be listed
Okay.
as I think you'll see that. he's never been afraid to add folks onto his bills when he's moving forward. Some other members don't like to do that, and it kind of gives you a little funny feeling if they don't do it. But I think he's amenable to that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Oh, Randy.
Commissioner, let me add to that discussion. So it's true. Senator Bell he reached out to his Senate counterparts, of which Senator Glazier is one. We had the what's the right term? The opportunity to meet with the Senator the day after, and he had not heard anything about this measure before that. That's what he said to us.
Right.
And so Lindsay and I briefed him on what we think is going to be the proposal 40 years, sales tax, $100 billion for the 9 Bay Area counties for building a big train multimodal transportation system to achieve congestion relief, greenhouse gas reduction, and VMT reduction. What he asked for, and we're working on, is a list of principles that our legislators in our county need to get in order to support something like that, because historically our county has not received what I would say our fair share. And so if we're not going to receive, as we say when we go to Washington, if we don't get all the money, at least if we can get regulation reform, then that would be equal to some money, because hopefully it'll make it easier to get allocations, maybe control allocations. So we're working on that paper now. We'll have Mark take a look at that as well, and then we'll send it through you. John Grubb will present at the board meeting on faster, so that's, the ball's in your court. One of the decisions would be, does the counties, each individual county board of supervisors have to vote to place the initiative on the ballot for their county? That'd be one, right? That's local control. And so, they may come in with a piece of legislation that says, no, when the legislature says it's okay, then it's on the ballot in all your counties. And I'm not really sure that's one of the regulations or principles that you have to decide on what you want to do.
Okay. If I can, through the
Go
chair,
ahead.
the point I'm trying to make is, this is just a Northern California vote. I mean, you're only going to vote on it in the 9 counties that put it on the ballot.
No.
Or
This would be-
let me get the whole thing. Or is it the whole state?
Yes.
And if it's the whole state, and as of now we don't have anyone from Southern California voting behind it, it's a question I kind of alluded to before, Randy. If I'm in Southern California and I'm getting 1% sales tax, why in the heck would I let Northern California even have a shot at leveraging money for the money I'm going after on the federal level and the state level?
So, and maybe Mark has a better answer than this, but my comment to Tim initially was, this is one of those bills that gets held up for hostage for a whole host of other things. That it's kind of like our extension. When we changed our the ability to exceed the sales tax by 0.5%, we were on the phone in the back there for at least an hour talking to the legislators that I knew, or ex-legislators, trying to get that thing out of KDL, the Speaker's office. Remember, it was held up.
Yep.
So, and Mark and I were calling, old legislators that used to sit on the CTC and others to say, hey, you need to tell the Speaker to release this bill. And ultimately, a vote had to be made on something that we had no interest in Southern California. Yeah. But yes, it could be held hostage.
It's not a done deal, certainly.
If I
Yes,
may
Mark.
clarify, I didn't quite follow your question accurately. I do now understand it. So I think there's 2 parts to a short answer to that. First, collectively, they'll all have to vote on it to authorize it to go forward in the ballot. But it's going to be a region-wide only, and nobody from Southern California. So, I just want to make sure I wasn't showing being dumb. I did
Yeah.
not quite grasp the question, so now I got it.
It's Bay Area specific, but has to be approved by the entire legislature. So it only applies to the Bay Area. So, yeah, it's still got a long ways to go. It's got a long ways to go, not only in the legislature, but with the electorate. So, depending on what method of funding they choose. So, any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate your being here. It'll be interesting to see what we hear at our board meeting. Thank you. Okay, Lindsay, anything more under legislation? If not, sorry for being late, folks. It took me 45 minutes to go 9 miles this morning, so And that was taking the back roads that were a whole lot faster than Treat Boulevard, which was absolutely packed. So somebody ought to do something about that someday, you know? Anyway. Yeah, it would be nice. You want to come to Clayton and have the meeting out there? You could all get there a whole lot quicker, except, anyway. Okay, the next item is item 7. It is to accept the annual audit reports, and we have a report from Brian.
Good morning, I'm Brian Kelleher, the CFO for the Authority. Today we're going to present to you the annual audit reports. I have David Bullock here with me from MGO. We've been working with MGO since I've been here. And so I will let David go ahead and speak first to talk about the audit process, to give you a little update on the Authority, and then also brief you on the management letter, which is the audit portion. I'm happy to bring to you another clean audit. And I'll let David go ahead and speak on that.
Okay, sure. Okay. Good morning. Okay. Well, yeah, Brian, as Brian mentioned, we've been out here for a while now. I think this is our 8th and final year. At least it is for me. So I'd like to say it's been a pleasure working with the Authority and then the staff. It's been a great experience and very professional. As you probably know, in your jurisdictions, the audit partner needs to rotate after 6 consecutive years. So this will definitely be my last year, and I've enjoyed it. So we've got 2 documents to discuss today, the CAFR and the management letter. I'll start with the CAFR first, and just as Brian mentioned, we express a clean opinion. It's an unmodified opinion. Basically, we agree with how management is presenting the financial statements. There's 3 things. I always like to point out 3 things, I think 3 highlights, and open it to you if you have any questions to discuss anything further. One is, GASB is always creating new standards, and as you probably know, the pension and OPEB standards in recent years were pretty significant. This year was pretty tame. There was just one standard that had an impact to the Authority, and that was additional disclosure on long-term debt, letting the reader know a little bit more information about your debt obligations. The second one is that I wanted to point out is just the way the Authority is managing its post-employment liabilities, both pension and OPEB. It does a really good job, I think, keeping those in check. You may notice that there was an additional contribution made during the year for pension. That's not reflected in these financial statements because it's 1 year in arrears. So we're reporting that pension liability as of June 30th, 2018. And so next year, when you present the 2019 measurement period, it'll reflect that additional contribution that you made. And on the OPEB side, you can see that with the contributions and earnings, it's actually an asset this year, small, but and that's the goal, I think, is just to try and break even each year, making sure you're funding those future benefits. And then the third thing I wanted to mention is just, the most significant, I think, transaction during the year was the refunding of the past bonds, which included a termination of half of that swap agreement. And so that kind of flushed through the financial statements, recognizing the loss that you took on the one swap, and then the other swap remains outstanding, or the remaining $100 million in swaps. So those are the key things, I think, in the financial statements. Again, I'm happy to ask answer any questions that you might have. On the management letter, it was a clean management letter. This serves 2 purposes. One is to communicate any findings or recommendations that we had during the year, and the other one is just to communicate our required communications, letting you know what changed from the prior year in terms of any new standards, what kinds of estimates are embedded in the financial statements, whether or not there's any disagreements with management, things of that nature. I'm happy to report we didn't have any negative experiences. In the back of the letter, we let you know whenever we pass on something due to immateriality, we communicate that to you so you know what decisions are being made and may not be reflected in the financial statements. The first one is just a recurring one that we do each year. The Authority likes to recognize the compensated absences, vacation, sick leave, liability in the general fund. And typically it's only presented as a long-term obligation, not a short-term obligation. So because of that, we just put this in here to let you know that decision. And the second one was just an accrual. It was an accrual for a grant reimbursement, and because of the timing, the authority wouldn't be able to recognize that revenue, and so they opted not to recognize it, and that was fine. But there should be a receivable, just noting that there's an amount due and to be collected in the future. So those were both really timing issues, and that'll flow through the 2020 financial statement. So I think that's fine. And the only other thing I wanted to point out is, we look at the internal controls each year of the authority, and I think we're satisfied with the level of controls that the authority had. One thing I wanted to point out that I think is really strong is the proactive nature of the authority. And so when we discuss cybersecurity and IT type of vulnerabilities, I introduced Carl Kispert from our technology group, which is part of MGO, to come in and do a specific look at cybersecurity, maybe some vulnerabilities. And I think there were some good recommendations that came out of that. So with that, I would like to, should I turn it over to you first, Ryan, or to the board for any questions that you might have on the audit?
Any questions? Wow.
Okay.
It's always nice to have a clean management letter.
I have just one. It's
Okay.
under the annual audit report, page 4, as I'm looking at your handout here. And I'm looking at to be completed late in December. Are we anticipating any problem with the LSM street maintenance
No, we're
in
not.
Clayton?
No, we're
No.
number 2 in the entire Bay Area. Thank you very much. Brian, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, I'll touch on that just really quickly. So the main focus at the beginning of the year is they come out and the auditors come out in June. They do a pre-audit, and then they come back out in October, and they work through. And what we try and do is we select the three different for the compliance audit. And then the federal audit, which is the single audit, which David mentioned, the revenue deferred piece of that. And then there's, for example, the city of Clayton. I've been in contact with their finance individual over there. I've been in contact with their CPA firm, and they're pretty much done. They just have to issue the letter. And then what we'll do is we'll bring it back in June for just an acceptance. It'll just be on the consent, and it's just an acceptance.
So they're a little slow, they're late?
No, they're right on time.
Thank you, Brian. That's remarkable considering we've had an interim finance manager for the last 5 months. Somebody who's trying to figure out the books. So, yeah. Yes, exactly. So thank you very much. Any other questions at all? Okay. Brian?
So with that, I'll quickly go through the CAFR. I have the PowerPoint presentation, which I put in front of you there. I also have the management letter and the CAFR there with you if you should like the physical hard copy. If you do not, please leave it with us, because part of our paperless process, I'm trying to print a lot less every year. And I'm trying to make sure that we have 5 to 10 in our filing system, just in case over the years people come and ask for a copy. I have an actual physical copy to hand them, but I can also have the paperless copy and just print a new one. So please leave those behind if you don't want that. So with the CAFR, you all know that we have the introductory section. That's where we get to the transmittal letter. We go through some economic analysis. We have some historical sales tax information in there. One of the highlights for me and for the finance department is the certificate of achievement we get from the GFOA. That means we have a clean set of financials. They approve them, say that we're meeting all expectations. And why that's important is over the years I've noticed that when we go to issue bonds, it helps with our rating. If you don't have clean financials, it could have a negative effect. We're still stuck at the negative or the AA minus, which is a beautiful thing. I think it's a great thing. We really want to move up to the AAA rated, and we're going to continue to go that direction. And that's my goal, is to get us there. And I know that's Randy's goal as well. The financial section.
I believe we're AA plus, not AA minus. Is that true?
You are correct, sir.
Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure, because I don't want to downgrade us any.
Yes. So in the financial section, one of the areas that we spend the most amount of time in preparing the document is the MD&A. The MD&A goes through the whole set of the financials, and it really drills down into the details and tells you all the numbers that are behind each number that rolls forward to the government-wide financial statements. And then we also have the fund financial statements, which takes the general fund, lists all of our projects and programs, and rolls it up into one. We also have our debt service, and we also have our special revenue funds outlined in detail there as well. The notes to the financials that goes through all of our major items, and I'll talk about those as we go through the CAFR. The final section, the statistical section, is just additional financial information about the authority from a historical perspective. So if you wanted to look at a 10-year forecast backwards, it's a really good area to look. And what I find really interesting in that section is the change of the capital projects, because you can see what years, 10 years ago, we started out some major large projects on Highway 4, and then you can see it kind of dipped down in the following year, and then it jumps up, $40-50 million, and you can see where we started the Caldecott Tunnel, and then, it dropped off the last couple of years, and you can see the major projects we're working on now, 680, the 684 interchange, the Balfour, and things like that. So with that, I'm going to go to the statement of net position. This is where we show our assets, the deferred outflows, our liabilities, our deferred inflows, and our net position. And overall, year to year, when you look at 2018 to 2019, this is just, what's changed. We talked about the capital projects. If you look at the total cash and investments, last year was about $230 million. This year it's about, our cash balance at the end of the year is about $174 million. And why did we spend about $43 million? Again, it's the capital projects. What happened was we had the 2017 bond where we issued $100 million in bonds, and we've been drawing down on the projects. So last year, in the 2019 fiscal year, we drew down about $43 million. If you go all the way down to the bottom, the net change is roughly about $43 million. Our long-term debt is relatively about the same. We paid off about $16 million in principal. We had some issuance of the new debt, so it remains about the same. Our debt service between now and 2034 is a level debt service, and that'll flow through the end. But our deferred outflows, David mentioned, on our OPEB and our pension side, we're reporting on our 2018 balances. So you have a deferred payment that is going to be made to CalPERS, and as we get through it, I'll explain a little more, where our balances are and our pension liability, and things like that. Here we have our revenues. Again, our sales tax revenues over the last 2 years has been a little over 6% growth. If you remember in May, I think it was of 2017, was it the California Department of Finance Authority changed from the SBOE, and they tried to speed up the payments to everybody. And with that and implementing a new system, they were to give us an extra payment in the 2017-18 year. And during that, so we got a little bump in that particular year because we received more than 12 months. So that was part of the increase in the prior year. But as a result of that, it deferred. There was a lot of complications in getting all the sales tax things processed. So we got a little bit more money in 2019 from the delayed payments from the prior year. But all of that is going to smooth out as we go forward. So when we present the financials moving forward, there might be a little bit dip in this particular year because we got a little bit of extra money in this fiscal year. But then we look down at other general revenues. What that is miscellaneous income, which was probably about $3,000, but the bulk of it is interest income. So an interest income in 2018, it's based off a market rate. So if we had a $130 million portfolio in 2018, our portfolio was held at a lower interest rates, and interest rates, as you know, went up a little bit in 2018. And so our market value was down at about $1.7 million. And then as we roll into 2018, our portfolio was maturing and we were buying new investments. And so the investments we were holding at the end of 2019 have a much higher investment value. So the market value jumps up, and that's why you can see the huge swing. And the swing on the market value between year over year was about $3.2 million. Program revenues, you can see the majority of the jump is in there into capital grants. Capital grants are directly related to all of our projects that we're working on, and it's on a reimbursement basis. through the programs on 680, Highway 4, the Balfour interchange, and the start of the 684. The revenues in there are from the capital grants that are received there, so that's the major increase. And the direct offset of that is if you go down to the expenses about the middle, you have your transportation projects. You can see that we went from about $70 million in 2018 to $109 million in 2019. Looking at the expenses, we have the programs, which is our return to source funds. We have the bus programs in there, the allocations of everybody that we spend money on a monthly basis. The new item in there is transportation innovation. We have the Momentum Station. We spent about $1 million on Momentum Station last year. And then we have debt service. Debt service remains a level debt service. And then when you get down to the bottom, the total net pension, the deficit is about $43 million. Again, it's the increase in project costs, and then we'll move on to the financial highlights. I touched on a lot of these items as we were going through the last two slides. So on sales tax revenue, it's up 6.3%. Federal, state, local revenues is about $31.5 million. The breakdown is $26.5 million goes to the CIP projects for reimbursement. Congestion management, we get about $1.8 million. The TFCA funds is $1.6 million. And Momentum Station brought in about $1.1 million as well. And we're wrapping up the PDA planning grants, and we got about $400,000 there. The one item that we're required to talk about is the administrative salaries and benefits. The allocation for staff time for our basic administration is about $626,000, and that is 0.65% of the 1% allocation. Administrative service expenditures is about $1.3 million. There's rent, there's consultant fees, and computer equipment and supplies as well. And during the year, we did make a contribution of $1.2 million. Again, that'll show up in our deferred outflows. Program expenditures is $22.5 million. That's slightly up from the prior year based off of the percentages of increases that we're receiving in sales tax. Local street maintenance return source to the cities in the county is $19.4 million. Transportation projects, $109 million. We touched on the 680 SR4 interchange, I-680 carpool, Balfour, and the BART improvements at the Del Norte station, and some of the other regional ones. Debt service is $37.2 million. And then we have transfers in from the general fund. We were talking about funds from the 2017 A bonds. As you can see, it was about $43.6 million. So the notes to the financials I'd mentioned is the most important part, and David touched on note 1, which is talking about GASB 88, the requirement. So we've added a paragraph in there discussing our requirements and what will happen if we don't make our debt service payments. And basically what would happen is all of our revenues would need to be turned over to the U.S. Bank, our trustee. Our funds already do flow from the state of California to the U.S. Bank to make our debt service 1/6 and 1/12 payments for interest and principal, and then the funds flow to us. So there would be probably no change in that particular order. But our cash is $174 million. We have $145 million of cash invested. Of that $145 million of investments, we have $122 in our investment pool that is managed by PTA, Public Trust Authority, and then we have $23 million in LAIF. And then we have our principal and interest, and then we also have some remaining project funds of $15.4 million, so we have $28.6 million set aside for our debt service and for our future projects. Our long-term notes is our bonds. We have $466 million in bonds outstanding, and then we have $100 million of the swap agreement. And based on that, we've also touched about our liability. If we had to close our doors today, how much would it cost to get out of this bond? It would be $24 million. The interesting piece on that is we talked about interest rates fluctuating in the last couple of years. So we really hit the market right in August of last year. It cost us $13.4 million to get out of $100 million. And as you can see, with interest rates being higher last year, it was a benefit to us. And as interest rates are falling this year at June 30th, it's $24 million if we wanted to pay that off now. So that's a big swing. So our pension plan, the good news is we're reporting as of 2018, it has a liability of $1,044,000. It's a decrease of $103,000 over the 2017 numbers. But during the year, we made a payment of $1.2 million. Is that going to defease it completely? No, because they still have to bring down the discount rate just a teeny bit more to 7%. So we will be right in the sweet spot as we make contributions in the moving forward, and I'll continue to look at that. Our OPEB, it had a negative $17,000 liability last year, and now we have a $65,000 asset. And we will continue to try and improve on that piece as well. The net position and fund balances is our liabilities. Our liabilities are $537 million. Part of that is the premium. We amortize our premiums over the life of the bond. So we have outstanding bonds of about $466 million, and then there's amortization on that piece. But one of the biggest things that I find exciting on looking back at all the numbers since Measure J and Measure C is we've contributed about $1.7 billion to the region, to just Contra Costa County. And last year we built about another $109 million of infrastructure. So we talked in the beginning, the statistical section, we have the financial trends, revenue capacity, debt capacity, economic of the region. It touches on employers, touches on sales tax and what categories of sales tax. Operating information shows the allocation of the 20 employees, where all of the people are working in which departments. And so it's interesting if you want to learn more about the authority there. So with that, David gave the presentation of the management letter, and we've presented the CAFR to you. And then we talked about the single audits and the compliance audits, and those will be brought back to the board in January, I apologize. And so if there's any questions, please do ask, and we will be presenting this to the authority board.
Any questions, Dave?
Yeah, going to, I guess it's page 3, notes 7 and 8. You mentioned that the OPEB jumped up to an asset of 65%. Trying to put this in, what percentage of OPEB are we funded? That's the question I get all the time. Always trying to determine, we're 100% at the city, but on regionals, we're at 65%, 85%. No, always people, where are we? Is this 112, 96? What is it? And you don't have to answer it now. It's a question I think you'll get at the full board. Just be prepared, that's all.
If I may, I'll let you know. So it's a $65,000 asset. So we are overfunded based off of the actuarial experiences and taking it through the normal lifespan of individuals. But as we pay payroll on a biweekly basis, we put in about 10% based off of that, and that's how we fund it. And so it's a percentage, and then
well, let me put it, because I see this as a good thing, and I didn't make myself clear with Mark. If you're 100% funded or 110, that's still a good thing, and it's nice to make that little notation that we're 100% funded, and I would just add that to it, because I know I'm in a battle at the regional level that no, put more money into the OPEB, get the 100% funded. It's one of those green flags, since I guess the bad things are red flags, that people like to hear. No, you're funded.
Okay. Any other questions? Looking really good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. So the action on this is to accept this report and send it to the full authority for approval, correct? Okay. I have a motion by Hudson. Second by Geringer. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Good job, as always. Been good working with you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the Connected Vehicle and Autonomous Vehicle Program, and Jack is going to do this one.
Good morning, Chair Pierce and committee members. My name is Jack Hall. I'm the CCTA's ITS Connected and Autonomous Vehicle Program Manager. So this morning I'm going to give you an update on our CVAV program and report out on the $3.5 million grant from the California State Transportation Agency. So the California State Budget Act of 2017 made $3.5 million available to CCTA for planning, construction, and operations of our CVAV program. The funds were matched with non-state funds generated by Momentum Station partner facilitation fees. The goals of the CalSTAT grant are to create a world-class CVAV test bed, provide public benefit to advance mobility and enhance safety, expand economic development opportunity and job creation in California, expand our public-private partnership, and deliver projects consistent with the grant agreement. The picture on this slide it shows the new skid pad that several partners had requested for us to construct, so that is now in there. One of the public benefits that we are working on is to reduce congestion by addressing transit accessibility in major activity centers. We know that we can't build our way out of congestion, and technology can help solve our existing congestion problems. Pictured on the right side is one of our new Ollie shuttles, which we believe will help solve the first and last mile problem to transit stations. I ride BART out of Antioch, and the parking lot's full at 6 a.m. BART has already expanded the trains to 3 cars, and they are adding more parking. It is almost a certainty that the new lot will fill up quickly because SR4 is extremely congested even after our widening project. We also believe that connected and autonomous vehicles will be able to follow closer to each other, thus providing more throughput on existing lanes. Safety is the number one goal in transportation, and Momentum Station is a secure environment ideally suited for testing. We have vehicle to X, or in other words, vehicle to everything testing. These pictures show pedestrian and animal targets that partners use for testing with their vehicles. There are also bicycles available for safety testing. So we are proponents of alternative fuels. On the site, we have solar-powered generators to power trailers used by researchers. An innovation that we were recently exposed to is to use electric vehicles as mobile power plants. Using solar-powered electric vehicles, one can power your house or even an office building if properly designed. Essentially, each electric vehicle is a mini power plant. With advanced energy storage systems, this could result in an uncompromising zero-carbon lifestyle. We are working on bringing Local Motors manufacturing plants to one plant to Contra Costa. These vehicles are 80% 3D printed, and a new plant requires a small footprint to construct. Pictured on the right is a high-speed oval test track. Partners are asking for the oval. However, the Navy will not allow us to do any major earth moving at this time. Our commitment to Concord is that we will not hinder the transfer of the Naval Weapons Station to Concord. If this oval track is realized, we would become a major competitor in the automotive industry worldwide, bringing in many jobs to the area. A lot of CVAV technology is developed in Silicon Valley, and our partners prefer not to travel out of state, making Momentum Station an ideal location. This slide highlights some of the recent improvements at Momentum Station in the last 12 months, which include 3,400 square feet of pavement resurfaced in Bunker City, installation of 3 signalized intersections, including protected left turns, traffic equipment for scenario testing, renovated co-working spaces, as well as creation of the Signal Lab that isn't shown in these pictures. And I just want to indicate that AAA is doing an outstanding job in the past 14 months as a managing partner. Recently, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, announced that we were one of 8 automated driving system demonstration grant winners. There were a total of 73 applicants, consisting mostly of universities and state DOTs. Our grant application was strong, and one of our biggest selling points was our partnerships with OEMs and our ability to test at Momentum Station. A similar grant being implemented in New York City ran into problems with testing. And so the U.S. DOT was aware of that, and they gave applications with a testing facility more credibility or more standing. It must be noted that this ADS grant is subsequent to the $8 million grant awarded to CCTA for Moss. That was in April of 2019. This picture shows two of our new Ollie shuttles that we were testing at Gomentum Station. Having American-made Local Motors Ollie shuttles versus French-made Easy Mile shuttles also helped our ADS grant application because of Buy America preferences. One of the performance goals of the CalSTA grant is to collaborate with public and private sector. This slide tells a very good story for public-private partnerships, and we have 3 new partners in the past 3 months that aren't shown above. They are Waymo, NVIDIA, and Tesla. Those 3 companies alone are about as big as it gets in the CV/AV field. We have some great news to announce concerning land transfers from the Navy. The East Bay Regional Park District recently took possession of their allotted portion of the closed Concord Naval Weapons Station. We have obtained an encroachment permit to test on their land. The larger photo above shows the Parks District's Corporation Yard in Pacheco that they currently lease. The smaller inset photo shows the interior of Building 420 located at Gomentum Station. The footprints of both buildings are almost identical. So we have been pursuing Building 420 to use as a CV/AV workshop since 2015. We had a preliminary design complete, but we're told to hold off until the land transfer. We are now working with the Park District to sign an MOU and their architect to renovate the building for Gomentum Station interim use and then permanent use by the Park District. The cooperation between CCTA and Gomentum Station and the East Bay Regional Park District provides opportunities to test and deploy new highly efficient autonomous mobility solutions. Accessibility for all means empowerment for all. Designed from the ground up, new mobility option technologies such as glideways will achieve both improved access and lower cost. Access to jobs, access to opportunity, access to nature, created in Contra Costa. Fully compatible with options such as bikes, scooters, and of course wheelchairs, a purpose-built vehicle can be efficient to provide flexible service, helping bridge that last mile without heavy infrastructure, lowering our impact and planning for a sustainable future. So please save the date of March 10th for our 6th annual Redefining Mobility Summit held at Bishop Branch. And now I'm going to play a short video that highlights Gomentum Station.
Welcome to Gomentum Station, a private and secure 2,100-acre proving ground for connected and automated vehicles, conveniently located 35 miles from San Francisco. Vehicles are tested against real-world scenarios with multiple distinct testing zones and a range of natural and man-made features such as railroads, city blocks, and tunnels. Recent enhancements include programmable traffic signals, merge lanes, traffic circles, and bike lanes, making Gomentum Station an even more versatile space for closed course testing. To better serve our industry partners, we offer a range of automated vehicle testing services, including equipment rental, test plan development, engineering support, and result analysis. Gomentum Station is owned and operated by AAA of Northern California, Nevada, and Utah, and part of our ongoing commitment to safety on the road.
We have seen a lot of excitement for AAA taking over the operation of Gomentum Station, particularly within the industry.
What AAA wants to do is make sure that the technology works. They want to get behind that technology when it works because their mission is to reduce the fatalities and the injuries on our transportation system in the United States, if not the world.
Visit us at Gomentum Station today to see how we can help you meet your business goals.
So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Teresa?
No question, but I just want to, every time I talk about Gomentum or hear about Gomentum, it's one of the things that I think the authority has so much right to be really proud of, and amidst so many things like perfect audits and things like that. And so I just want to give hats off for the work that's going on out there, and to state that I haven't been out there in a while, so obviously I need to be out there for a tour, because just in looking at the video from the last time I was there several years ago in my day job, a lot has happened, and I look forward to going out and visiting again. But just kudos to everyone for making this happen and for keeping it growing.
Tom?
You know, not infrequently, I come across stories or presentations, both in this country and internationally, where a state or a city or something is touting their facility similar to Gomentum, and you know they typically exercise bragging rights. You know, we've got this, we've got that, we're the biggest, we're the best, blah blah blah. You know, realistically, how do you think Gomentum fits in, like, worldwide? You know, are we in the top 10? Are we, you know, where I know it's probably hard to rate because they're all different and that kind of thing, but if you had to be really objective about it, where would you put it?
It's got the potential to be in the top 5. Randy's been to Spain, I believe, to see some sites. I mean, maybe you could answer that question a little better than I can.
I would say that Gomentum Station, at least in my experience, and maybe Habib would agree with this or may not agree with this, but in the top 5 in the world. So you have a test center in Ohio that's been in place for years for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Mm-hmm. The Transportation Research Center, TRC, has been in place for many, many years. It's not as big as Gomentum Station, but it certainly has all the wide oval and the high-speed testing and the you know, bad pavement and the salt baths. In Spain, same thing. They have a large test bed there run by IDIATA where you have like a tower. You can see the entire site. It's like a airport, and they run all these different tests to make sure that the vehicles meet certain standards. In our case, if we're typically compared against Michigan, so we got some inside intel the other day. I don't remember. I think I was speaking in Japan, and a guy that used to work for the American Mobility Center, he said they're understaffed, and they're only doing research for the sake of doing research. What you have empowered us to do is to create Gomentum Station to not only do research, but to do deployment. So you, as an elected official, you don't really, the research is great, but at the end of the day, you want rollout of products that are proven to be safe, reliable, and then they can help meet our goals. This is what I said yesterday. I was in Montreal, and I told them that what we're doing here is we're trying to achieve certain goals. We're not, we get accused of testing these vehicles because they're new, bright, shiny objects. I said, we have 3 goals that the board has asked in California, the state of California. Congestion relief, we poll our customers every year, and we update our countywide transportation plan. We're trying to change the way we approach the future. So we're changing the way we model the future. So congestion relief, greenhouse gas reduction, and now we have VMT, or in their case, vehicle kilometers traveled reduction. There's only been 2 times in the history of the United States where VMTs dropped. Jimmy Carter, when you couldn't buy gas, and then the Great Recession when nobody, your jobs were not prevalent, so people weren't working. And so we have a big task ahead. So we're testing this technology, not for the sake of research, but for the sake of deployment, safe, reliable deployment. And so we're getting a lot of these different companies. The electric bicycle company the other day came up to us and said, hey, we would like to deploy in Contra Costa and for the first time for the United States. And so I said, well, I'm pretty sure Richmond would like that because they want electric bicycles to go across that Richmond-Santa Fe bridge. So I would say we're in the top 5 in the nation. Richmond? And San Ramon. I did mention, sorry, I didn't see you there, Commissioner Hudson. But yes, I did mention, that's a true statement. San Ramon as well, because you have the bike path, and I told them we're building the bridge over Bollinger. Yeah. And you have a large employer there. Sorry, I did say that.
Thank you.
Dave.
Yeah, I'd like the 3 again, Randy, that you'd bring up. We probably should be saying it a lot. But I think with Moss, where we're going, that the 4th one should come in there. All of our general plans, most people think, have a section for transportation, for traffic. We don't. The mandated item that has to be in the general plan is circulation. And I think really that's where Moss is going. We have to add circulation to it sometime, just sort of connect in the cities. And I see that as the Moss platform over the next couple of years is really going to be at the spearhead of how you can use this stuff in Richmond and San Ramon and the business parks. And the minute people catch on that you can pull out your phone. I did it the other day. I don't know how to use my phone. And it came up Moss and 6 icons. And I'm going, what? I can't get back to it. That's how bad I am. I don't know what it is. But I think that's really going to be the highlight over the next couple of years, is how to make this Moss platform even more exciting than the AVCV.
Any other comments, questions? I would just comment it was a great presentation. I'd love to have a copy of that slideshow. The other thing I wanted to mention was the actual report. You're asking us to take action on that today, or?
Yes, just we're going to send it, or we have a January 10th due date for
Right.
the state, so
I had some typos and some grammatical things here and there, a couple of those. So if I can forward that to you this afternoon from my computer, I've got it marked up and stuff like that. That would be helpful.
sure, thank you very
You
much.
can tell there was some heavy editing going on. There's an additional, word here and there that didn't get deleted when that got done. So I'll forward that to you. But it's an impressive report and succinct, which is important when we're doing that kind of thing. People might actually read this one.
Unless you don't want them to read it, then make it 180 pages.
Exactly.
You need a motion to
Yes, I do.
Approval of the Cal State Progress Report and authorization for the chair to submit the report to the Secretary of Transportation Joint Legislative Budget Committee.
Of a motion by Hudson, second by Taylor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Yes. It was an enthusiastic but quiet one. Okay, very good. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the I-80 San Pablo Dam Road Interchange Improvements Phase 1. And getting us some legal help. Who's presenting on this one?
I'll present it, Madam Chair.
Okay. Hisham.
Good morning, Madam Chair and authority members. Staff is seeking your authorization for the Chair to execute Amendment 1 to Agreement 528 with Wendell and Rosen in the amount of $65,000 for a total value of $75,000. Back in June, the authority, the executive director, signed a $10,000 agreement with Wendell and Rosen to help us research the legal issue we have with the East Bay Mud on the San Pablo Dam Road project and basically determine the facts and the next steps that we need to take. We were looking for a firm that's not conflicted. Unfortunately, our current legal services firm represent the East Bay Mud in some of their offices. They needed to be familiar with the transportation issues, and we would prefer a company that worked for an agency like ours. Wendell and Rosen fits the bill. They provide legal services for our sister agency in Alameda County, the Alameda CTC, and they have faced a similar issue with East Bay Mud in one of the Alameda CTC transportation projects. As you may recall, as part of the project, East Bay Mud denied their financial liability for relocating their pipelines. Rather than battle it in court at the time and delay the project, we agreed to reimburse them for their actual cost, but returned our right to get our money back through a court order or negotiations. We ended up paying them about $2.9 million for the relocation of their services. That's a significant sum on a $40 million project. Now that the notice of completion has been issued by Caltrans, we just got it in September of this year, we need to engage with East Bay Mud. The first step is to send a letter demanding reimbursement of our $2.9 million. They have 45 days to respond. If they don't respond, we need to follow the government claim procedure and try to get relief from court, asking the court to force them to reimburse us. If the court at that point doesn't think we have a legal case, we can assess our options at the time. We can either drop it or we can litigate it further if we need to. Since it's hard to tell what East Bay Mud will do, we may have to come back to you to increase the budget in the future if the case goes into prolonged litigation. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Dave, your light's on?
No, I just forgot to turn.
Okay.
Move approval.
Thank you. Motion by Butt, second by Hudson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Go get that money. We need that for other projects. So, very good. But thank you for getting the project done. That's a good thing. So, we appreciate that. The next item on the agenda is correspondence and news clippings. You have whatever you have. And Commissioner and staff comments. I have no additional comments or reports other than that. I believe this is Susan's last APC meeting.
Lucky you.
We will miss seeing you here bright and early on Thursday mornings. But we wish you all the best. So, and it's not farewell because you're not gone until the end of the month. But
And I will be at the authority meeting.
of course you will. Of course you will. So, but it's not the same as a bright and early Thursday morning. So thank you, Susan, for all those years of dedication. That's wonderful. Okay, any other commissioner comments? Dave?
Yeah, the comment I made about Moss, I want to stay on it a minute because we had a very long presentation at the Air District on where some things were going, grant, climate activity, and I really think that this presentation, of course I said the same thing about Randy, the presentation is needed at our ALMA conference at the end of June, but I keep going back to this increase that we show the analysis for bikes if this measure passes, and I think it's about half of what's going to happen. The bikes and how people use it are just going to be so important in how all of this transportation, all of the mobility ends up on this platform and how fast you can move it. Maybe it's because we've been taking too many long trips, but how many hours did we spend staring at that stupid plane going across the Pacific? And you find out that you're looking at different things that are on that little platform. I'm not so sure of how far you can take this, but I really think the Moss is the next big thing. I'm reminded of what Bill Gates said, Microsoft. From today forward, we're now into the internet. And I think that's kind of where we are right now with Moss.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? If not, staff comments? None. All right.
I do have one. So just
Okay.
following up on your comment, so we are inviting the commissioners to Susan's retirement breakfast on Monday the 16th at 8:30. So
Right.
Taylor bringing his wares.
Wonderful. We will look forward to that. Very good. With that, we are adjourned to our next meeting on Thursday, January 9th. Please note that is a week later than normal because of the holiday, and so we will see you on January 9th for the next APC meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you.